Hey, good evening, everyone. Hey, hi, Rohit, hi, Diane, hi, Aarti. Yeah, we have a class today, just a bit delay in starting, right? Okay, so hi. Today the attendance will be just put in a few minutes. So yes, right. So just tell me if my voice is audible very clearly, guys. Yes, today is the last day. Today is the last day. Okay, so yes, so I guess how many students are there? Okay, so we have around 30 students, so we can basically start, right? So let me just put my chat right here. Okay. So let's start right away from where we left off. So before that, let's see the agenda, right? Okay. So is my screen visible? Is my screen visible, guys? So I also open the chat in the mobile also. Reference. Meanwhile, just give me a confirmation. Just quickly set up everything. Okay. Right. Okay. So is my screen visible, guys? Great. So yeah, so we stopped yesterday at basically manipulating content and HTML content. Today we have basically rendering HTML and loops and array object in HTML and manipulating styles. So we will do that with the project. Okay, so we will create a kind of project. Mohit, you can just go back and see the previous video. It's there on the YouTube, right? So today we'll learn about this remaining concept with the help of the project. So let's get started. So just open the folder. So I'm just starting up the whole, you can say the whole setup. So meanwhile, other students can join, right? So let's open with code. Okay, so this is basically our folder structure. So let me zoom. Yes, this font should be visible. And let's create a folder for today, A5. And in that, as always, we'll have our index.html, where we'll have this basic syntax. Let's remove the unnecessary part. Okay, guys, we're just setting up the whole thing. Okay, so I'll be just doing it in a quick way because I've already done it how many times. In this, we'll have script file. Which will be called as DOM basics2.js. So I'll just use a relative path that, and I'll just create it. And as always, a check. Okay. Uh, is this visible now? Is this visible? Because now it should be visible. So we actually have time till 8 only. I have another class. So okay. So let me just pull my editor this side and our result here. Okay. So now it's visible, right? Right. So let me also zoom the console. Right. So now what we are basically going to learn is how to create a small, let's like a problem statement here. What you are basically going to learn, create a small project where you can add students and search students by name. Okay, so kind of a small database we will create. Okay, and we will take inputs on the form using HTML. Okay, this is what we are going to learn here. So for that, before we go into this project, a few things we will need to learn. That is, as per our agenda. That is, any doubts? Any doubts, guys? Meanwhile, one thing which I had to teach you is the create element. Okay, the create element method, which basically lets you create any element which you want in HTML using JavaScript. Okay, for example, let's suppose we have body here. Okay, we have a body here, and what I want to do is I want to create an element. Previously, what you were doing is we used to first what used to do was first write the element here, and using JavaScript we used to fetch that element using document.get element by id class or tag name, and then used to work on it. But now we are learning to create an element with JavaScript. For that, what we need to use is this create element method, which is again a method of the document object, right? For that, what we'll do is we'll try to just basically write a paragraph, a plain paragraph with this method, right? So for that, what we'll do is we'll create a variable para. In that, what we'll store is this thing which you want to create, that is document dot create element. And what type of element do we want to create is basically a p tag. Okay, we want to create a p tag, so we'll store there. So now what we have done is we have basically stored basically we have just stored a tag. Okay, we have created a tag, but in that tag we also want to write something. And how do we put something is, like, if you want to write text, you use inner text, and if you want to write some HTML, you basically do inner HTML. So now, since it's a paragraph tag, we have to just put some text. So what we'll do is we will write para dot inner text. And as we have learned, right, if you have to set something, you have to just use the assignment operator. If you want to get, you have to just write the inner text. So with this, we'll just write paragraph using JS. Okay, we have written paragraph using JS. So now we have created the element. We have also written some. Okay, I need to change it to inner text. Okay, so now we have put some text into it. Now what we want to do is we want to add this into the DOM. We want to add this into DOM, and as we have learned, right, this body is the direct child of, you can say, a part of the document, or basically the HTML, right? Document is basically everything. Like when we do this, right, when we do document, it basically gives us this object, that is the document object. Now when we basically uh, like if I do document.body, if I do document.body, I am getting this body element. Okay, I am getting this body tag. So now what I want to do is I want to add this somewhere here. I want to add this somewhere here. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll just tell this JavaScript to do one thing. Okay, go to the document, go below to the body element. Now in that, just append this. What I am doing here is I am just telling it to append a child, right? Because as we have learned, since they share children and parent relationship, anything that goes into a body by default becomes its child, right? So we want to append the child. Like currently it's having 0, we want to append the child, basically add a child, right? So we'll do this, and in that we'll pass this para. Okay, that's basically it. Let's try to refresh, and you can see we are getting this thing. Okay, we are getting a paragraph onto a browser, and we have written nothing in HTML. We have written nothing in HTML, and that's basically one way. So now you have another things, right? You have create text node, you have basically append before, or sorry, insert before, insert after. Okay, you have a lot of variations and methods to do that, which we are not going to go into detail. We are basically going to focus on the basics and the project, right? So this is one thing. Anything, any doubts still here, guys? Any doubts still here? The create element, just let me know. I'm just looking at a chat. Just tell me any doubts. I'm not seeing a lot of questions here. Is it clear, guys? I need to switch to live chat. We add text here. We add text as in say in this para, right? If you see, I have added this text. Okay, so how basically it will look, how basically it will look in the DOM is, let's see, right? Let's go into the elements tab. Let me just move this. So if you go into element, right, and you check in the body, what it has done is basically added this here, added a p tag with the text what we have suggested it. Okay, and why, the another reason why it has done it before is like, first it went into the script, it checked it, it basically did the execution in there, and after that it's going to add it. Okay, so is this much clear, guys? Is this much clear? Okay, where is the chat? Great. This much clear, guys. Another thing we want to do is, like, as I mentioned, right, every attribute of the HTML tag is available as with a dot notation. You can access that attribute in JavaScript. Okay, so these are like, now we are going to learn to manipulate styles, basically CSS. People who don't know CSS, it's basically just like you have a house of bricks and you're painting it. Okay, you're basically giving it a color and putting some elements in proper place. Okay, basically renovating or furnishing your house. That's basically what CSS does to HTML, right? So now there are a few styles, so we'll just take one example how to do that, right? So what I'll do is, now what we've done is we have created an element. Okay, we have created a para element. Now what I want to do is, I want to change its color. I want to change its color, the font color, to red. Okay, I want to change the font color to red. Now, as we have learned there, right, when I told you every element can have a style tag, this is the internal way of writing the CSS. So this is basically an attribute and this is its value. Okay, this style is an attribute and this is the value. So now what we want to do is, we want to basically add some styling to our p tag. Okay, what we have already created. Another way, if you want to do it to another HTML element, you can just get it and then do it. So now I'm going to do in the same example. So what I'll do is, I'll do para dot. So now I want to access the style attribute. So what I'll do, I'll do style, and now I want to change the color. Okay, so now one thing which you need to keep in mind is, before I write this, so CSS is basically written in this way. Okay, so if there is some attribute called as in CSS, if it's like background color, if it's written like this in CSS, in JavaScript equivalent for this will be camel case. It will be lower camel case. Okay, in JavaScript it will be written as background color. Okay, any property in CSS you have in this such way. If it's single thing, like if it's just color, you can write it the same way. But if it is having multiple words, it is like done with a lower camel case, right? So I'm just skipping it here for a reference. Now we will do again style dot color. Now again we want to set. Okay, again we want to set the color. So assignment operator, and we are doing red. Let's see if this works. Let's see if this works, right? So I'll do refresh, and you see that the paragraph tag has been changed to red color. Okay, now similarly I can do anything. Okay, if I want to do para dot style dot border, I can see it will basically give you the way. Now let's not do border. What I can do is background color. Okay, I'm doing background color and I'm making it yellow. I'm making it yellow just for example purposes. And now see, it's by default like being changed. Okay, this is how you basically access styles with JavaScript, and you can basically access any styles. Okay, in JavaScript. Is this much clear? Is this much clear? Append child, see, append child. Okay, let's understand append child again. Okay, what we have done basically. So as we learned, right, document or HTML is the root element, head is one child and body is another child. Okay, I'll just separate this. So head is one child, and body is another child. So now again, in body, whatever comes inside the body is basically a child of the body element, right? The script is a child of the body element. So similarly, what we are doing basically with JavaScript is we are doing this. Okay, we are creating a p tag and we are writing something. So we are creating a child. Okay, we want to create a child, and you have a function in JavaScript that is called as append child. you are basically adding a child. So now with this, let's try to see what I've done. Okay, so what we did basically is we went here and we created an element, document dot create element. This is the method to create any element. You can create a div, you can create a table, anything you want to do. And then you basically inserted some text. Inner text, you set it to paragraph using JS. Now you went and accessed the style attribute and set the color property to red. And you did another one with the background color. And now what you're doing is you access the document, which is the HTML. Then you went one step down into the body element, and in that what you want to do is add a child or append a child. And what do you want to put is this whole element which you created right here, that is basically stored in the para variable, right? So now you're just putting it here, and as a result what you're getting is this. So I guess now it's clear, right? Is this clear, guys? Is this thing clear? uh Rohit, just check the spelling. It's you have written the wrong spelling. It's DOCUMENT, not DOUC. Okay, right. So not now, what I'll do is, now it's time for the main thing. We have to create a project, right? We have to create a project because it will actually take time. So we'll go right into it. So okay, okay, no, don't worry about the attendance. I'll just have it corrected. Okay, so just stay till the end. Okay, just watch the lecture, complete the lecture. Attendance, I'll speak meanwhile to the team and get it sorted. Okay, so now what we're going to do is, let's focus on the project. Okay, let's focus on the project. So this is no more needed. We'll have another script which is src project.js. Okay, so now here I'm going to basically use a few HTML elements which you need to see. I'll teach you what those are and what those mean, which will basically help you in the whole thing, right? So for that, what we are going to do is create a simple, create a basically a simple kind of a form which will have some values. Okay, so let's learn what you will do, learn in this whole thing. Okay, you will learn basically to render an object on HTML. Okay, you learn to render an object on HTML. Okay, you will basically learn to add data into object using form. Okay, and you will also learn to search dynamically by name. So this has the basically are three use cases. So the way we follow, right, we basically write down the problem statement, and then we go ahead. Okay, so now let's do one thing. For that, what we are going to require, I will go one by one. Okay, so firstly what we need to do is render an object on HTML. Okay, render an object or an array. So I'll basically start with an array which will have many objects. Okay, so that both the things are covered. Okay, so till here everything clear? Let me just see the chat. Up until I have Himanshu explained. If I get time in the end, I'll again come, or else you can just go behind in the video and see it. Okay, so what I'll do is, now let's have this. Let's try to refresh and check if our script is working. .log hello from project. Okay, so now what I'm basically going to do is, let's see if this works. Okay, hello from project. Setup is done basically. Pop out chat. Let me have this as a separate thing itself. Okay, so this is aligned with this, right? So now let's do one thing. Let's have an object. Let's quickly create an object. So next 30 minutes, please focus and just see what I'm doing. Okay, we are basically going to use everything we have learned till now. Okay, so we will have what, as we discussed, we have to store the students data, right? So we will create a variable students which will basically be an array of objects, array of objects. So now we have to decide. So now I'll be taking a few names from the chat itself. Okay. So what I want to do is I want to store three things. That is a name. I want to store name. Okay. Which will be a string again. Then I want to store an email ID. Okay. And I want to store the age. Or I can say city. Let's store city. Okay. So you can basically do the assignment, which I can give you. So we want to store these three things. Okay. And we'll have a few entries at the beginning. So let me take Himanshu Kadam. You can see you can create many keys in the object separated by commas. Okay, not semicolon. In object you have to use commas. Auto completion, the extension is tab 9. So email, I am just trying to go write dummy himanshu@gmail.com. Okay, city I am going to write Mumbai. So now similarly I want three basically I want three objects. So what I'll do is I'll just replicate this, and after every object I need a comma. Right. So this is basically our object, and I'll just try to change the names. So okay. So I'm just taking the names of the regular students. Arkady, if you can just write your actual name, it will be great. I'm just writing anything. Okay. Rohit @ just let's change something. .com, and again this goes to some. Okay. So now we basically have this, and let's try to see how our object looks. Okay. So let's see how this looks. And basically our array is having three elements which are again having objects, are basically objects, and again in those we have three parts: name, email, and city. Don't worry about the order here. Okay, you have three things. So now what we want to do is we want to print this here. And we do that with the help of a table. We will use a table, HTML table. For that, what we'll do is just let me erase the unnecessary part. And okay, so now what we're going to do is basically create an HTML table. So is the problem statement very clear to you guys? Right, so let's do one thing. Let's go here and create a h1 tag. Let's get a h1 tag which will have the value as students data. Okay, so let me see if I'm missing. So now what I'll do is guys, I'll come to the chat. 15 minutes later. Okay, I'll come to the chat around 7:15. Okay, so because I want you to focus on the concepts apart, like rather than the chat. So once I'm done using one functionality, I'll come to your chat. Then we will do the second functionality. We will come to the chat. We'll do the third one, and we'll see the doubts. Right. Between that, please focus on the concepts. Okay. So now I'm not looking at the chats anymore. Okay. So I'm just keeping it aside. So even if you type, I'm going to just ignore it for now. Right. Yep. So now what do we have is, let's see what do we have here. We have this element. So let me just, okay, I've zoomed it. I'm going to reset it. So now we have the students data tag. Okay. For that, let's do one thing. Let's basically do some styling. Let's basically do some, okay, not required. We are going to do the basics. I don't want to go into the HTML details. So now what you want to basically do is create a table. Okay. So I'm going to use a table tag. Okay. So now table, as you know, if you have learned in like your college and everything, they basically tell you that table has rows and columns. Okay, they basically tell you that table has rows and columns. But in HTML, when you write, it will have rows and cells. It will not have a column. It will have row and cell. Okay. So now let's see how do we write a table. So now we have written this. So next thing is, as I mentioned, you have to basically write a TR, basically which is a table row. This is basically a table row. In that we want to write what we want to publish is name, email, and city. And one more variable which we'll do is a serial number, basically to keep a count. Okay. So now similarly, I need four more. So what I'll do is I'll do this and I'll do name, email, and city. I'll do name, email, and city. And now let's see how this is looking. So this is basically looking like this. Okay. So now you can't differentiate between this. So what I'll do here is I'll basically give it a attribute again border. So this is not the correct way to do it. We have to do it using CSS. So for now I'm doing this. So now let's try and refresh. So you can see this is coming as a table. Again, it is having some issues. So what I'll do is I'll just quickly create a style tag as and when required. Okay. So you don't need to worry about what I'm writing in CSS. Okay, just for the styling purpose. You don't have to worry about it. So now what I'm to go is I'm going to target the table with a class. I'm going to write a class table. This is about bootstrap, and I'm going to take this class the same way as we target in this table, and width is equal to 100%. So now we have this a proper table here, right? So now what I want to print is basically the elements. Okay, what I want to print is element, but before that a few HTML specifications, and let's correct this double border which we see. So I'll just write an attribute. There's another attribute that is cell spacing. Cell padding is not required. Okay, there is something called a cell spacing. So now it will just become as a proper table, right? So now what I want to do is, this is a kind of the header of the table. Okay, this is basically the header of the table. So what I'll do is I'll just take this and put it into a tag called as t head. Okay, so every table will have two components. Like your HTML has head and body, table has t head and t body, right? So I'll just paste it here. So this is the thing, and what you can do is you can basically convert all these table cells into table heads. Okay, you can basically convert this table thing into table head. So what I'll do is I'll basically I'll do I'll basically do is convert this table head. Okay, so now let's see the difference. It will basically become bold and centered. Okay, so now we have the structure ready. Now want to populate the data. So let's, the first, like the very good way of doing it, to basically by default add the data in the HTML before you go into JavaScript. Okay, as you have learned. So now what do you want to replicate is a cell. How it is going to look is, again in T body you will have a table row, and that in that you will have four TDs. Okay, now let's take data from here. Himanshu Kadam. We will put this here. Basically our first head is serial number, so in that it will be 1. Okay, second is name, third is email. So I'll just go and copy the email and put it here. Okay, I'll go in Mumbai and put it here. Okay, so now let's go and refresh. So now you can see that we have the values in the table. Okay, but now this is with HTML. Okay, so now basically what we learned in the previous lecture and previous concept, like we add something into the table, we add something into the HTML. So that was the one way which we learned, right? The one way which was learned was to create an element or append child. Okay, so now we will learn it using another way, that is just writing it into a string and adding it into the HTML. So for that we need to basically replicate this thing using our JavaScript. We have to basically create this whole block of code from line number 30 to line number 35 using JavaScript. And so how do we do that is basically just like first, so for that we'll need to this access to this element, that is the T body. Okay, we'll need an access to the element. So what we'll do is we'll just do, well, we'll get the access to this class. Okay, we'll get the access to this class using T data. Okay, so this is the table data what we're using, right? This is the table data what we're using, and we want access to this block. So we are doing this. We can use it using ID. Okay, and do get element by ID. I'm using class to show you how it's done using class. Okay, so now you go into the project part. Okay, so now instead of this what I'll do is, so Okay, let me pull the chat right now. Table tag. Great, great. Everyone is focusing on the chat. That's great. That's actually great. Everyone is focusing on the chat. So now what we basically want to do is basically display the object array of array of objects. So these are the objects and this array. We want to loop over. We want to go to each and every element, create a table, a block, a tr block, and add it to the HTML. So now let's break it into parts. Okay, let's break it into parts. So for that, of course, you will need a function. Of course, you will need a function. So let's create a function. Okay, so I'll write the comments. Display the object on HTML. So for that, we will need a function. For that, what we are going to use is function display data. Our function name is display data, and what it will basically do is it will loop over each and every student. It will first go to this element. It will go to this element, take the name, email, and city, create a tr block, store it somewhere. It will go to the second element, create a tr block, store it somewhere. Go to the third, create an element, store it somewhere, and then this whole three parts, it will just inject it into the HTML. Okay. So now we have learned a for each loop, right? In the last lecture, we have learned something called as for each. So what we'll do basically is I'll just take the students array. So our students is an array, right? So on that, I'll do a for each loop. I'll do a for each loop. So in that, I want to do a function. Okay, so this the one way which we learned was using the normal function. Another way which we learned was using an arrow function. So in that, now we are going to use arrow functions. Okay, we can do it the same way using a normal functions also. So first writing the syntax. So this is the syntax, and here you will get access to each and every element. So I'll write it using student. Here you will get access to each and every element, every object, right? So now what I want to do is let's declare a variable let row. Basically the one row, okay, one row of the table. That is basically this. So this is basically we're telling as a row. Okay, this is a row. So now we are creating a row. So in that, what I want to store by default is let's create the element. So now see, if I write like this and I break this, our HTML breaks. Okay, our HTML breaks. And for that, I'm going to use backticks. So you can write it on multiple lines. So that is another feature of backticks. Okay. So now what we want to do is basically, what I'll do is see, very simple. I'll just go to this. I want to replicate this, right? I want to replicate this. So I'll just copy this whole tag, paste it here. Okay. So this is what I want to basically replicate using JavaScript. So I'll just paste it here and make the changes. So instead of Himanshu, as we have learned, right? How do you add values into JavaScript template returns by using the expression, right? So dollar symbol, curly braces, and I'll write the student, basically the student, right? Which you are getting object of student, and then this particular key, okay, and this particular key. Similarly, we will have something called a student.email here. So I'm just going to copy this, and instead of this email, what we are going to write is student.email. Okay, and instead of this Mumbai, we are going to write student.city. So now, what this basically thing is doing is for each and every student, it is basically creating this row. For each and every student, this is basically creating a row. Okay, so now we want to store it somewhere. Okay, so we are storing it somewhere. Okay, so now what we want to do is, okay, so what we'll do is we'll basically create a table data which we want to populate it. So we'll create a table data here, and by default it is going to be empty string. By default it is going to be empty string because we want to accumulate everything in one place, okay, which we want to render onto the HTML. So what we'll do is we'll create an empty string, and every time this loop runs, okay, so first time when it runs, it will go into the name of Himanshu. So first time when it runs, it will basically do is do the loop part. Okay, do the loop part. Just let me put a semicolon. Okay, so it will run a loop for once, and then we want it to add the data to this table data, basically concatenate the string. Okay, so we have learned that operator, right, to concatenate in easy way or just to increment or something. So what I'll do is I'll write table data. Okay, that is our variable. Table data is our variable here, which is an empty string. In that I want to add, so I'll do plus equal to, or you can basically do this, table data is equal to table data plus row. Okay, for your easy understanding. Another way to write this same thing is table data plus equal to row. Okay, these are the two ways to write the same thing. Okay, so for your reference, I'm just skipping the above one. The below one is the shorthand. Okay, so now this is one thing. So now, since the function is declared, we have created a function. Let's try to run it. Nothing is happening because we have not called the function. Okay, so how do we call the function? Is basically take the function name and run it. Take the function name and call the function. Now let's try to run it. Still not running. Anyone can spot the error? Anyone can spot the error from what we have learned? Just let me see this. Okay, I've removed this. I've removed this. So anyone spot the error? What I have done? Let me just open the chat in my mobile. What am I missing? What am I missing? There is one thing which I have not done. Inject it to the DOM. Right, Himanshu. Inject it to the DOM. Great. So just calling the function is not going to help because we have not actually put it into DOM. So for that, what you need is we created a class, right? We created a class. Now we need to fetch this class using our JavaScript out of this for loop. Okay, out of this for loop right here. We'll do document dot get elements by class name. What is the class which we have given is p data. That's what we have given is p data. And now we have, it's basically going to give us back an array. Okay, if you want to see this, I can actually, even if it's like, even if it's 0 element, it's going to show us an array because it's elements. Okay, so let's see what it gives us. So you see it's giving us a collection. Okay, it's giving us a collection. So we need the 0, so basically we need the base, the first element, okay, which you want to go and target. So what we'll do is we'll write this, and in place of the first element, that is the first tag, that is the t body, which we have the access to there, in that now we are going to put the HTML. Okay, now we are going to put the inner HTML, and inner HTML we have put and equal to table data. Inner HTML equal to table data, that is basically a string which now contains all the 4 rows made with the for each loop. Now let's try to run this. So now you see this is done. Let's try to make this inner text. Let's try to make this inner text, or let's see what happens. I'm going to run this. Now see, you see the difference. When you do inner text, it basically will render everything as text and not HTML tags. Okay, so this is the way it looks like HTML inner text. So when we do inner HTML, it is basically going to render it using HTML tags. So one more thing which we need to fix here, is this serial number. Okay, which is not repeating. So let's create a variable again out of the loop. Let sr number is equal to 1 by default, and instead of this, let's again create a expression which will store this variable sr number, and after every time it is done with the concatenation, sorry, I want to increment it by 1. Okay, so now as you can see, it's basically having 1 2 3, it's having 1 2 3. Okay, it's having 1 2 and 3. So now we have done the first part of our project, that is render an object on HTML. Is this clear, guys? Is this clear? Let me switch the chat. Is this clear, guys? So we have created one of the we have just completed 1 out of 3 parts of the project. Is this clear, guys? What did you not understand? What did you not understand? Also, see, if you are mentioning you have doubt, also mention what the doubt is. Yes, of course, you will need to do a practice. So it's nothing like we have basically used the same thing which you have learned. Okay. Basically, I replicated the whole HTML again into this JavaScript, right? Thank you. Thank you. Great. So now let's go to the second part. Now what we want to do is add the data, add the data, basically add a new student. Okay. Add a new student. For that, we will go say basically going to require a form. We are basically going to require a form, a few form variables. So for that, what we'll do here is create a form. Okay. Above the table, we'll create a form. Great. No, no, we are not annual added manually. See, our table data, table body is all clear. We have created everything using JavaScript. Okay, we have created everything using JavaScript. So now the next thing I want to do is I need a form. I need a form right above the table. Okay, which will basically insert the elements as and when I click the submit button into this table. Okay, into this table. So let's do that. So now this is our second thing. So for that, I'll be requiring a form. So for that, I'll just create a div element just to separate it. Okay, this has nothing to do with the form. Okay, I'm just writing it for my understanding. Okay, so now in this, uh, what I want to do is basically create a form, and form tags are created in the form element or the form tag, right? And we don't need this end now. So now the way of writing an input type field, which we basically learned yesterday in the small project, it input, okay, type text. So let's see what it gives us. It will basically give us this part. Okay, it will basically give us this part. So now let me create a small gap. Okay, so let me create a small gap. So again, I'll go to the style part. You don't need to worry about what this is. Okay, so now what I want to do is I'll basically want to create a few of these. Okay, with some text. So for that we have something called as placeholder, and it will have something called as name. Okay, so you see this is visible right here. Similarly, I'll add a few tags like by default it should be required. By default it should be required. Required basically was that you cannot leave the form field empty. It will give you an error. So if I do like this and try to submit it, it will give me an error. Okay, the next thing which I want to give is a name, because we want to be able to identify each of these tags using some ID, right? So I'll give an ID called as name. So this in like this we have to create for each and everything, like for email and city. So what I'll do is I'll just replicate this below. So for email we have something called as typed as email. Okay, it will check the email, like if it's like a email or like a text, and it will give you error. So we'll write email here, and then we will write the ID as email. So for city we are going to keep it the text, the placeholder will be city, and the ID will be city. Okay, so we have our HTML form done here. Okay, so we have this. So now we want a button to submit. We want a button which will submit our form, right? So there is a way, like there are many ways. You can do input type submit, or you can create a button with the type of submit. So I'll be doing it with the button type submit, right? So let's create a button type submit. Okay, and in that what I'll do is add student. Okay, so you see we have a button. We have three fields: email, name, email, city, and add student. So as of now, if you see I'm writing, I'm putting empty, it is giving me an error. This is because of this validation which you have put, the required validation. Sorry. Okay, so what we'll do is just give me a moment, guys. Just give me a moment. Just wait a moment. Okay, so yeah, so what we need to do is now basically is the chat's gone. Okay, so what we need to do is now we have this form and we want to what we want to do is whatever comes in this fields, okay, whatever comes into this fields, we want to add it here. Basically, be like below Rohit's row, right? So now we will now like we have everything in this here. Now we want this value to be sent somewhere. Okay, sent somewhere. So by default, when you submit, when you click on the submit, everything in this field will basically be submitted. So if I do demo add, see if I do write anything and try to add submit, it will give me an error that it's not an email. Okay, so I'm writing something, some dummy value, gmail.com, and CT I'm writing anything. Now when I do add student, you see that the page refreshed, okay, and everything is gone. So this is the by default behavior of JavaScript, that whenever you do submit, the page refreshes and the data is sent to whatever like action path you will suggest or web action you give, right? So we need to stop this. So this is one thing we need to do, and second thing is we need to get the values and put it into the object, right? So yesterday we learned about on like some events, right? Like on click, on key press, which we used into the project, right? So now we will have another thing that is called as on submit. Okay, we will have another thing that is called as on submit. Okay, so there on submit, so now we will create a function. The function name will be add student. Okay, function name will be add student. So now let's create this function into a JavaScript. Let's create this function into JavaScript. Till now, okay, no doubts, everyone is focusing. That's great. That's actually great, you guys are focusing, right? So now we are going to do add student. Okay, great. So now we have done this one function, right? We have done this one function. So now about this, I'm going to create this. Okay, so you don't need to see the place where I'm creating, because as it's a function, every function is taken at the top, okay, before the call, before the function call. So what I'll do is, even if I do it here, okay, let's do this here. So what I'll do is, our function name is function name is, okay, function name is add student, and the body. Okay, the first thing we need to do is stop the by default behavior of JavaScript, that is like submitting the form and refreshing. So for that, like every function, if you like every so now what you do is you are basically calling this event. Okay, on submit is an event, and this is basically the event handler. This on submit thing is basically the event handler, and what this function, which basically listens to the event, is called as the event listener. Okay, the on submit keyword is the event handler, and this function which will listen to your event is called the event listener. So now, like every time you call an event handler and pass a function, it by default sends an like a parameter, that is a event parameter, which you can basically access to, which basically get an access to. Okay, so now we'll do see what we get an access to. Okay, no, br doesn't require closing tag itself, like it's optional. Okay, it does not require a closing tag. Okay, so now what we'll do is, first let's see what access do we get. Okay, let's see what access do we get. So console.log, and in that I'll put event. Okay, so now let's go in the HTML, and here, so what I'll do is I'll just put Prasad and Prasad.letsupgrade.in, and I'll put Mumbai, and I'll do this. So now you see by default it's submitted, and it did not even go here. Basically what it did was it executed this and it went away. So now this is the default behavior which we need to prevent. Okay, this is the default behavior which we need to prevent, and for that we have a function in JavaScript called as prevent default. Okay, we have something called as prevent default. So we will just call this function event dot prevent default, which will tell whatever your default behavior is, just prevent it. Okay, so now let's try to run the same code. Okay, start. Now just I'm using another email ID. Now see, now I got access to the event. Okay, the submit event, as I mentioned, it was passed with along with the function, and it will have everything. Okay, it will have actually have everything. What was the path where the function was called, everything related to the function. Okay, when it was called. Okay, so now what I want to do next is basically add this into table, add this into the table, which is an array, which is basically an array, right? So since I've done this, the next step is basically to add an add this into an array. For that, we'll need to create something like this. We need to replicate this name, email, and city. Basically, we need to create an object. So for that, what we'll do is we'll first of all create a blank object. Okay. First of all, we'll create a blank object. Let new student equal to a blank object. Okay. Let new student equal to a blank object. Now we are going to basically whatever we get. Okay. Whatever we get, we are going to add it. So now for adding it, we actually need three things like name, age, and email. Okay, and that we have access to with the IDs like name, email, and city. So let's create first more three variables to get access to those elements. Okay, let name equal to document dot get element by ID name. Okay, this is one. Let email equal to document dot get element by ID email. Okay, I'm just creating auto complete because this is you have done many times. Just I'm doing this. And let city equal to document dot get element by city. So now, as we mentioned, right, it's a form, and this value is stored in an attribute called as value in the form. Okay, by default, you will get this whole element if you do this. So we need an access to the attribute that is value. So what I'll do is I'll do value. I'll write value everywhere. So it will basically give me access to the value whatever is stored into these fields. Okay, so dot value and dot value. Okay, this all things I've used in the previous sections. So now what I want to do is I want to add this data into this object. So as we learned yesterday, right? So for that, I'll do is I'll write student, sorry, not student. I'll write new student, and how to create one way of creating an key in the object is create a dot notation. With this, you get access the similar way of like using JavaScript. With just a dot and the name, you get access to it. If you want to assign something, put an equal to sign, and you will do name. Similarly, you will do the same thing for your email, and again you will do the same thing for city. Okay. So let's revise what we did. Okay. We got everything from the HTML with this on submit function, and first of all, we prevented the by default behavior of JavaScript. Then we got the values which our form was holding when it was submitted with this ID. Okay, and we have stored into three variables. Next, we created a blank object. As you can see, we need name, email, and city, which we populated with this. Now, if I if I want to basically console.log, okay, let's console.log a new student, okay, and see what is happening. So if I refresh this and I put Prasad, this and this, and I do this, now you can see I'm getting this object. Okay, I'm getting this object, name, email, and city. But we don't want to print it into the console. We basically want to just print it as an HTML. So basically, what are this function? Okay, what our display function is doing? Where is this function? Okay, what our display function is doing is display data is basically going on this array that is students for each. So an easy way to do it, just add this into this array. So since it's array of object, right? Since it's an array, it has a method called as push, which will add that particular element to the end of the array. So we are going to use that. So what I'll do is I'll just go here. I'll just comment this out. Our array is students. In that, I'll just push at the end of this. What I want to push is the new student. I want to push the new student at the end of the array. So since once this is done, I again want to call the display function. Okay. So what will happen is I want to call the display data function. So what it will do is first it will push this element into this array, and your array will now contain 4 students, and then it will again run the display function, which will run the for loop and which will display all the elements. Let's try to do this. Okay. So I am writing Prasad, this and this. You can see it's added. Okay. So now if I do another Prasad Savant and I do my email ID and write Mumbai, you see it's being added. Okay. Is this much clear? So we have done 2 out of 3. So this is done. Render an object on HTML, add data into object using form, right? Sorry. So Is this clear, guys? Now I'm just taking into the chat. Yes, guys. Now you can come into the chat. Viral sir, प्रेम साई सर कॉल कर रहे हैं, मेरे को कॉल है, प्लीज देखो देखो. Okay. So yes. So now I'm looking at the chats, guys. Just tell me if you have any doubts. Just tell me if you have any doubts. Yes. I'll actually share everything. I'll share all the code. Okay. I'll share all the code. Do you have any doubts, guys, in this? Can we see the data in the script file? Yes, you can all yes, you can see this. Okay, so we will just so one more thing we want to like do is the search function. So if someone is like doing it live along with me, here is the code. Here is the code, right? So this is the thing. Oh, so you want to see the data? Okay, see, this is the by default data I had created to the students. Okay, then we do this display function, and then you have the add student function. So I'll actually yesterday I forgot to share you the notes. I'll share it today, both yesterday and today's notes. Okay, so you can see this from that. All right, guys. Any doubts? Thank you, Karthikeyan. Okay, so now one more thing, like we basically did yesterday, right? We were writing something in this input tab. It was dynamically being printed. So now we want to replicate a similar kind of thing, but we want to do something called a search, like in Amazon, right? When you just you basically type something and you search, you have to press an enter key, but you will have something advanced. With every key you type, your JavaScript will run a code. Can we write the data in this array to JSON file? Yes, you can do that. Yes, you can do that. You can basically even move all the data. You can basically move all this data to a JSON file and then import that into your JavaScript and use it. Okay, you can do that. Okay. So now let's I'll just write it something called add student. Okay, I'll write add student. So now okay, so let's move it, guys, right? Let's move it. So now we have another function. Another last thing is dynamically search a student. Okay, so now this data, right? This data, whatever we are having, by default, just these three people will be constant. Other threes will be like kind of deleted every time I refresh, because this is a temporary storage. You can use local storage for setting, or you can, if you have any database, you can do that. That's advanced things, right? So now we basically are doing what we want to do is basically add a search button where we can okay, so let me just the chat for once again. So we'll again come here for after 10 minutes. So each time for each will run for the students. Yes, every time the for each will run. So now what I'm doing basically is, see, what I did was I took this element, right? So this is for display. Okay, so I did this. When I do this push, right, when I do this push, what happens is it basically takes this object with whatever data I have filled and goes into this array and pastes it here. Okay, it will basically paste it here. And now when you pass the students to a for each loop, it will run for 4 students. Yes, you can only add the last entry to the table. You can add anything, basically. You can add anything. So it basically depends on the way you write the code. Okay, this is just kind of the basics I'm covering. So you can do something like that. If you want to do advanced, we have a proper JavaScript in detail course, kind of the full stack web development course. Okay, so where we basically learn everything, and like you can say we have almost skipped, you can say 90% of JavaScript. Only 10% we are learning here. If you want to learn the remaining part, how whatever things are possible, we have a separate course just focused on the details with projects, right? So now let's go out on the third part. We are basically overshooting. Okay, so we'll just take 10 15 more minutes. So now guys, again the same thing. So now I guess you don't have any doubts, right? I'm not getting anything here. No. Okay, description, it will be too long, it will not allow. Okay, I'll give you the code right after the session, right? I have one by 10:30 you should have the code with you. Okay, so now let's do one thing. So now we want to search a student. Okay, for search what we need is basically we will again need something called as a input element will type, where we will type and get what we want to search, right? So let's do that. So for that, what I'll do is, let me add something to this. Okay, not required. So what I'll do is, I'll have another div, the class form. In that, what I'll do is, now again focus on the code. We will meet again after 10 minutes. Okay, and I'll explain you if you have any doubts. Okay, so again I have a text. So let's see how it looks. So I have something called as this. Okay, a blank text. So I need something in there. So I need a placeholder. Okay, the value of placeholder will be enter search query. Whatever you want to search, please enter here. Okay, we'll request here. And next thing is, we want to get access to this. So for that, we will require ID. Okay, so I'll write it something called as, yes, search query is fine. Whatever we get in the search query is fine. Okay, so this is there. Now what we can do is, basically, let's see. So now what we can do is, by default it will not have anything. So what I want to do is, let's first create a, like again, like we did in yesterday's lecture, right? We did something with every time we typed, it basically printed on the console. Every time we typed, it printed on the console. The same event we are going to use, that is on key up. Basically every time I do this, I press the key and lift up, I want something like some function to be called, so that my search query is dynamic, right? So for that, what I'll do is, I'll write a function called as on key up. On key up, what I want to do is search the student. Okay, so write the function so that you can best actually read it and understand what is happening. So on key up, I want to search a student. Okay, so let's see what happens. So as always, we'll have by default such just a console log statement. Okay, by default we'll have just a console log statement, so to understand what is happening behind the scenes. Okay, so let's do that. So let's go here. What was, I'll just copy the ID. I'll just first of all get the function name correct. So again, the keyword function search student, and in that I am putting this. So now I want to fetch this whole element. Okay, I want to fetch this whole element and get the value. Okay, because it's an input type of element, it will have a attribute with value, which will store. If I write this is stored into an attribute called as value, which I need access to, right? So I'll just take the search query. I'll go here and I'll write let search query, or you can just write query, let query equal to document.get element by ID, and in here I want to paste the value, that is search query. Okay, now let's try to console.log query. Let's try to refresh. Okay, now you see every time I'm writing anything, it is being printed, and every time I'm deleting everything, it's also been printed. So on every my key press, some function is called. That function is search students. So now what I want to do is, I want to basically search it in, and how they see there are many ways you can basically search from all the elements and then cut your array down. The most optimum way is to use a function called as filter. It's like, basically, understand filter like you are filtering tea, right? You're filtering tea. So you have the tea and you have the powder, right, which you don't want. So what you do is, at the end, is put it you put a filter there, and you put the tea on it. You just get the tea, and the unnecessary part is just kept aside. Similar function we have in filter. It will check a condition, whatever you say you want, and unnecessary part it will ignore. Okay, so what we'll do is, it will store this into a new array. So we don't want to disturb our original students array. Okay, we don't want to disturb here. So what I'll do is, I'll create a new array. What it will do, it will basically iterate over the students. Array. Now I want to filter. So like for each filter also goes to each and every element. So filter, again, it's a function, so it will do this. Okay, so now since it goes to each and every element, I should have access to each and every element. So I'll go to a student. Okay, I'm getting access to each and every student, and on this I am calling this function. Okay, so another way to write this is using the old the function declaration way which we learned is this. Write the function keyword and remove this arrow. Okay, I'm just keeping this for your reference. For people who want to try with this, you just copy paste the code which will write here into this and it will run. Okay, so I'll just comment this code out. Okay, so now what we want to do first is just check if the name of the student matches your value. Okay, name of the student, or basically whatever you write. So suppose you write A here, you have to check that if A exists anywhere into your name. If it does, you have to return that whole part back. Okay, you have to return this whole element back. Okay, so what it will do is your filter will take one student. Now it will perform the logic mentioned here, and all that elements or all that data which will pass that logic will be returned and stored into this new array as an array. Okay, filter basically returns an array. Right? So so now what we need to do is, see, we basically first need to get access to the student.name. So for each student I have a key called as student.name. So I'll go slow because it's going to be complex. Just focus very nicely here. Okay, so I'm going to do student.name, and what I want to do is I want to check at which index it is matching. I want to check which index it is matching. So how this works is, let me explain you index of first. So I have, let me just zoom this. Okay, so now suppose you have a variable. Let str equal to let's upgrade. Okay, so this is, I have defined this variable. So if I want to do index of, okay, I need to do this str dot index of, if I need to see index of u, okay, where this u is occurring. If I need to see index of u, I just need to put this and it will give me the value. See, it is telling it is at the fourth place, that is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, it will basically give a numeric value that the index, yes, it does occur. Okay, it basically give you, yes, it is occurring at the index 4. Okay, similarly if I do this again with let's suppose say s, it will tell 3. Okay, so what you're basically going to do is, whatever value I get here, whatever value I get from that search query, I want to match if that actually occurs into this vertically occurs into our name. Okay, so as I see, what I did was I passed the value which I wanted to check into this function, index of function, and in our case that value is basically this query. Okay, so we are going to use the same thing. So what I'll do is I'll just call the index of function on the name. So if I have to explain you with the example, so first of all what it will do is it will go to, let's suppose say this first object. Okay, let's take this Rohit object. So in that case it will go to the name part. It will have access to all this. On this part it will actually apply the index of function, and then it will check if whatever we have provided in the search query, that is suppose a, is present or not. Okay, so for that what you have to do is mention what you want to show here. So in our case it's query. So whatever I have queried, is it available or not? And as you know, right, or if you must have learned in any programming language, by default if that value is not present, your function returns -1. By default, if that value, or if your function fails, it basically returns -1. If it is like running perfectly, you return 0, right? So in case you, we don't want it to return -1, we want it to return everything apart from -1. We want it to return everything apart from -1. So what I'll do is I'll just mention here not equal to -1. So whatever your query is, whatever your value, basically as I mentioned, this thing, right, student dot name dot index of query always gives you back a number, always gives you back the index, and I don't want any index that is -1. Apart from that, give me anything, I'm okay, right? So I'm writing just this thing, and now our array will basically have all the elements. Suppose if I'm writing a, it will check each and every name. Whatever name has a into it, it will basically give me back the whole this student element. Okay, So whatever student will pass, it will be stored into a new array. Whatever student will fail, it will be ignored. Okay, so with this, that's it. Okay, you have basically done this. Now another problem we have is how do we display this? How do we display this? So because see, our display data, what it does is basically, so let me do one thing. So for that, what I'll do is I'll just console.log to show you, okay, how it works. Before print, as always, we will console.log, right? So now just say this, okay. So now let's find what is common, what is not common. Okay, so D is not common. D is present in the first two names. Okay, D is present, so I'll just write D. Okay, so now it's giving back me blank. Okay, it's giving me blank. I actually messed up somewhere, I guess. Let me go through the code again. Search query, this is perfect. New array, students dot filter, get each and every student. On that, student dot index of, and press the query not equal to -1. Okay, why is this not working? Let me refresh. Let's try to print a. Line number 80. Okay, something has messed up, guys. Anyone, if you can help me out. I'm actually not able to figure. I have written something wrong. Which I'm trying to figure. Just a small mistake here and there, I guess, which is causing this thing. Search query is perfect. Enter search query on query search student. It's perfect. Console.log. New array. So here everything, like whatever I have done is into this. Okay, let's try to see if, okay, I'm getting the array. Okay, this queries part is working, so that is fine. So something we have messed here. Let me pull up the chat if I can see, if you guys can help me out. Okay, again the chat has stopped. Go to live chat. No, the bracket thing is correct. Bracket like -1 is correct. Bracket -1 is correct. Let me write to break this. Students, I have the access to students array. It is the same part. Okay, just let me close these functions. Students, okay, students dot name. Okay, something. Students is perfect. Student dot filter, pass one student on that. Okay. I got the error. I have to basically return it. I'm not returning it. I have to basically return it. I'm not returning. I'm just computing. As I mentioned it, I have to return it. Just a silly mistake. Told you, just a silly mistake. No, filter. Everything is perfect. Just I had to return it. That's it. That was the only error. Because I was just computing, right? I was just computing. I was not returning. So now let's see. Now it should work perfectly fine. So let's try to write this D. So you see, I have got something, and in that I have this Himanshu's name. So now you see we have faced another problem. Right? D is present in Kadam also, and is present in Diane's name also, but it is capital, right? And this is small. So how do we pass this error? It's basically very simple. You basically convert either both of the values, that is your name and query, to lowercase or uppercase. So in this case, I'll convert everything to lowercase. So I'll do, there's a function called as to lowercase. Okay, it's a function. Okay, it's a function. It's a method. We have to put this to call a function. We use this, right? So you have to use this, and the same thing, the same method I'll also use. The same method I'll also use here. Okay, I'll also use here. So now what it is doing is basically convert everything into lowercase and then comparing, right? So now let's try to put D. So now you see I have got two values, that is Himanshu and Dian. So now let's try to see common things, right? an. You can see an is available in all the things. So we'll write that. So we'll let an. So we are having three elements. Now let's put w. Now you see I have just one element, that is Rohit Tanwar. Okay. So now this is happening on every click. This is happening on every click. So now we have actually found a way to get it into our console. Now the only thing remaining is to display it on the HTML. Okay, so now for that, our display data cannot handle dynamic data. Our display data function cannot handle dynamic data. So what do we do now? So we learned, right? If we want to pass some element, sorry, pass something into our function, we can do it using our parameter. Okay, we can do it using the parameter. So what we'll do is here is very simple. We will basically pass something called a student array, which will be which is not there, which is just a parameter name. Okay. So now instead of running it directly on the students, it will basically run it on whatever we pass. It will basically run the function display data on whatever array we pass, right? So for that, one more change we need to do is instead of students dot for each, it will be student dot array dot for each. Now another change we need to do is our by default display function. So now if I do this, it will not work. Okay, it will basically not work. It will give me an error stating property like for each of display date for each is not available, okay, for that particular element. So now what I want to do is basically put my what is the array name, what my I have to pass this students array as a parameter to my display data function, so I've done this. Now let's see. Now I have this. Okay, so what I'll do is now I'll do this and this, try to add student. Now again it's not happening because I have to again I have again an error which basically tells me that this again doesn't have a for each. So in that, this add student again in display data, I have to give the students array because we are pushing that into that array. Now let's try this. So we are very at the end of the project, right? So now let's try to add a new student. Add. So you see it's adding. Okay, it's adding. Now we want to search. Okay, we want to search. Now let's see, it is just printing. It's just printing, right? We want to basically put it onto the HTML. So what we do is we just go to our search there and we just, instead of console.log, so now we have this function, right? Whatever you pass here, it will display on the HTML. That's what our display function does, right? So what I'll do is instead of putting it into console.log, what I'll do is I will put it into a display data function. Display data, in that I'll pass this new array because it will have the students we have filtered, right? So now that's it, and we are done with the project, right? So now if I have to see, now let's close this. Let's view it in full screen. I'll just increase the size. Okay, so now let's run it. Okay, so I'll just write my name, Prasad and Mumbai, and add it, and then I have someone, let's say RKD arcat gmail.com, and again I have some rest. Let's suppose I have it from Chennai. I'm adding it. Now if I want to search, right? If I want to search, see, that's easy. If I am writing HI, now see, that's how dynamic search we are operating. Okay, so after at every key press, it is changing. So if I type O, this is present in this. Now it's case sensitive. Let's see. If I'm writing capital D or small d, it doesn't matter. It will basically dynamically search the data, whatever we have, and just manipulate the DOM accordingly, right? So any doubts what you have learned, from here, any doubts, guys? So with that, we have basically completed our small project. Yes. It will not refresh the page. It will just re-render the data. If you see, it is not. It will not refresh. It will not refresh the page. You just look at this arrow button. Okay, just look at this arrow button. We are not refreshing the page. We are just adding the data dynamically without refreshing the page because we have stopped that by default behavior of JavaScript. That is, submitting the form. So I cannot actually see the live chat. Yeah. So guys, just tell me, did you have fun? Did you have fun in the 5 days? Did you have fun in the 5 days? I actually don't want to go into the CSS part. Actually, don't want to go into CSS part. So it will basically become confusing if I start manipulating the CSS. So let's keep it simple. Let's keep it simple. People who want to learn it advanced from us in a better way of explanation with like your personalized mentoring and everything. We have our proper PGP program for that, right? Yes, yes, Himanshu, I'll give you the code. Yes, you can use any type of loop. Yesterday we learned, right? Yesterday or day before yesterday we learned. We tried the same thing with for, do while, for each. You can basically achieve the same thing with any kind of loop, right? So with that we have completed a small project. Thank you, thank you. So how many of you guys? So let's let me know. Like after learning this 5 days, right? How many of you guys want to make a career into JavaScript? How many of you guys want to make a career into JavaScript or become a web developer or full stack developer? How many of you guys? Thank you, Sumanashri. So let me actually see how many people are actually watching the video. Okay, so we have 46. Okay, not bad, not bad. So let me have it here. This is JavaScript. I have actually purposely not included all the what you can say HTML and CSS. We have a proper a proper session for that in HTML CSS where you learn about websites, right? This is just basically just JavaScript, and that's the only reason I have not written JavaScript, CSS or HTML there, right? That's great. So if you want to basically become a proper JavaScript developer, we have a proper full stack development code, okay, where we learn everything from the basics of JavaScript to advanced technologies like the whole MERN stack, MongoDB, React, and everything. Hi Akadi, what is your name? What is your name? Can you just tell me your name, Akadi? You are actually studying in my batch, right? Just tell me your name. I'm not able to figure out. Just tell me your name, what your name is. So we have a proper PGP batch and where we teach everything in detail, right? From HTML, CSS, Bootstrap, JavaScript, jQuery. Are you going to teach JavaScript if I enroll? Maybe depending on the batch you join. Okay, so I'll basically come for a few sessions here and there. But we all the trainers we have are like top notch, amazing, even better than me. So you'll have actually proper industry professionals, okay, who will come and teach you, who have a lot of years of experience into that industry. Okay, so all the teachers we have are top notch. Oh, hi, Atanda. That's you. That's great. So we'll actually meet half hour later, right? 8:30. We have another half session. So people who like whoever wants to join our full stack JavaScript developer, like a web development course, our admissions are now open for the next batch. That is October batch. We have both morning and evening batches. So anyone who is like considering to join this PGP, the fees for the PGP program is just 25,600. You get access to all our four programs, all our four PGP programs along with placements. Okay. So the link to the form, right? Just let me give you the link to the form, Himanshu. Just let me give you the link to the form. Yes. Rohit, just give me like tonight, maybe by tomorrow afternoon, I'll put it in the community. I'll ask people to put my team to put it in the community for you. Okay, my VS Code settings, I'll say that. Yes. Okay, great one, Karthika. So we'll summarize before you leave, right? We will summarize what all things we have learned in JavaScript till now. Okay, so let's have an agenda right here. So we started off, right? We started off with understanding what is JavaScript, why was it, how it was developed, who developed it, what was the basic requirement, and how it evolved over the basic years. And with like Node.js coming into 2009, how it got more popular with when JavaScript was available to use outside of the browser, right? So let me just have this chat here back outside. Okay. So how it actually helped to move like take JavaScript to better possibilities, right? Then we learned about the way to print JavaScript statements, the syntax, the comments, and all the data types and variables available with the operators like logical, mathematical, relationals, and special sequences. Then we went on to the conditional statements, if, else if, and ternary statements, and then we moved on to control statement. What are control statements, right? You have while, for loop, which are basically entry control statements. You have do while, that is the exit control statement, right? And apart from that, we learned two more things. That is for in and for off. One gives you access to the keys, and one gives you access directly to the element. And then we learned about like functions, working with functions, the way of declaring functions, like your function declaration and function expression. What is the difference? That is, function declaration gets hoisted at the very end of the JavaScript file. Function expression does not do that. It stays where you have written. So if you call the function before declaring it or before writing it, you will get an error, right? Then we learned the new way of writing the function, that is arrow function, fat arrow notation, and what are the variants, how you can type that, right? Then you started off with DOM manipulation to access elements by using your class IDs, tags, right? And adding events to that or manipulating content, right? And then you learned how to render your data in loops, manipulate CSS styles, and we get this whole project, right? So that's basically that this much chunk you have learned in just 5 days. And kudos to you guys for actually all the 45 students who have been with me, like learning JavaScript and coding all the 5 days long, right? So a great shout out to all of you, and a few students I have met every day. So thank you everyone for being here. It's actually been a great time teaching after so long, and I hope to see you, like many of you, in the PGP program. So I hope to see you there, so we can learn everything from basics of the web development again to the very advanced, and we can actually get you placed into better corporates, so you can make your career very strong and very robust, right? So yep. So what else? Yes, our team is circulating the form here. So all the people who want to join. Yes, see, return keywords. What it does is return keyword. What it does is, so when you make a function, right? One way is right to directly write a print statement. Okay. So let me just I'll see if I have the file. I should have the file. Okay. See. So what it happens is, where do I have? See, what it does is basically when you write a function. Okay. When you write a function, you basically directly calculate here, do some logics, perform some calculation and print it. But every time you don't want to do that, because you want to get the value and maybe perform some another calculation with it, right? So you do a return statement, and as and when your function comes across a return statement, your function will stop executing. So no matter if you have some important logic written after the return statement, it will simply ignore. Your function will be like called off. It will end right there where it comes like across a return statement. So you can basically calculate some value and send it back, and it will be stored in this variable, and you can print that variable, right? So I have basically explained it yesterday. You can just go to the day 4. I have to yet share the code. I'll share both this code today for you guys to refer. So that's what return function does, right? So all the people who want to join this can actually join. So the price, okay. So the price, yes, yeah, I'll actually share the code link. I'll actually upload it to Drive and share it. Okay, so the price of this course is on the website. If you go, is 30,000 for 10 students. Okay, for just 10 students who are just joining this course. So let me just write the price for you guys. For just the 10 students, it is on the website. You will see it's something at 29,600. Okay, 29,600 is the price on the website. So for just 10 students who are joining this course from this class, from this JavaScript class, you will get a 4,000 rupees off by using my coupon code. That is Prasad. Okay, it's INR 25,600. Okay, in that what you get is our AIML program, our data science program, our Python and Django program, and our web development program. You get all the 4 programs live, 6 months long, with career placement, projects, mentoring session, all of those things. Right? You get all of this just for 25,600. What you have to do is just pay 1,000 rupees. Just pay 1,000 rupees and book your seat, so that you don't have to wait for another batch. Okay. So we have one batch coming on 20th October. The registrations are now open, so it's like almost getting full. So if you are one who are to join, so 20th October is a morning batch, and people who are planning to join the evening batch at the similar timings, like 6:30 or 7:30 or 8:30, we have one more batch, evening batch coming at October. Okay, 30th October. So anyone who wants to join, the link is here. The link is here. luc.to/pgp. That's the link. Okay, that's the link. And if you are looking to join, yeah, hi, Viplav is another one of the students again from the PGP course. So I'll actually see you there. So just fill this form. You will get a call you'll get a call tomorrow from me. I'll actually speak to you guys, get to know your profile and your like backgrounds in career and why you want to do that. And if I feel right you should do this, then only we can take it ahead. Okay. So yeah, so with that, I'll be signing off for the day. It has been a great time with you guys for the last 5 days, right? So keep coding. JavaScript is huge and interesting. Just keep coding. If you need Let's Upgrade support in any way, you have our community. We keep on doing essential programs. Share our programs with your friends, and we have, again have referral prizes going on. So share as much as you can, so we can provide this quality education at the affordable price to many more students who want to do something in their career, right? So we have referral benefits also. So just share as much as you can so more people can get advantage of it. So if you liked what we did, right, just hit the like button. So like whatever 49 students we have, just hit the like button so it can reach to more and more students, right? So with that, I'll be like signing off for the day. So you guys take care, be safe, and maybe we'll meet again after a few months and we'll learn something new, right? So bye bye, take care. Yes, and Viplav, I'll see you in the next class.